Boys and girls, this is going to help you on fractions, decimals, and percents. First problem, it's saying convert to a fraction. So you're taking a percent and you're going to convert it to a fraction. This is very easy. First thing you're going to have to do is just remember that anytime you have a percent, that's a fraction. It's the percent over 100. So 30% is 30 over 100, and then we'll just reduce it because 6 times 5 is 30, and 20 times 5 is 100. So I could divide by 5 and get 6/20, and then I can divide by 2 because 3 times 2 is 60, and then 10 times 2 is 20. So they have a common factor of 2. Therefore, I could reduce it to 3/10, and there's my answer. 3/10. All right, next one. Convert the following ratio. Ratio is the same thing as a fraction to a decimal. So right now we kind of 14.40 is 14 to 40 is the same thing as this fraction. And to convert to a decimal, so right now we're going fraction to decimal. All you have to do is divide 14 divided by 40. 14, notice how the 40 is on the outside. Now 40 does not go into 14, so I'm going to add a 0.0. Bring up my decimal. 40 goes into 140. Well, I know 40 times 3 is 120. So it goes in 3 times. Remainder of 20. I got to bring down a 0. Imagine, add a 0 and bring it down. 40 goes into 200 5 times. So my answer is 0.35. Next one. Convert to a decimal. So this is the same thing up here. Fraction to decimal. So 1 over 3 is 1 divided by 3. And since 3 can't go into 1, I'm going to add in a 0.0, bring up my decimal. 3 goes into 10 3 times. Add a 0, bring it down. 3 goes into 10 3 times. 3 times 3 is 9. You'll notice that what's going to happen is I'm going to keep getting a 3. So we're going to round that to 0.33. Next one, convert to a decimal. Now this is really, really easy. When you have a fraction and you're converting to a decimal, it's not like these guys over here. This is actually going to be a little simpler. You can do 12 divided by 100 and get the right answer. But when your denominator is 100, you could just write it real quickly as a decimal. Because remember, the first place to the right of the decimal is the tenths place. The second place is the hundredths. So when our denominator is 100, I could just read this. 12 hundredths. So it's a 12 that ends in the hundredths place. There's my answer. 12 hundredths. A lot easier than dividing it, right? All right. Next one, converting to a decimal. Same thing as we did before. 6 divided by 15. Add a 0.0. Bring up my decimal. 15 times 4 is 60, so it goes in 4 times with no remainder. So there's my answer. 0.4 or 0.40. If it said 0.40, that's also an answer. 0.4 and 0.40 are the same things. Next, convert to a percentage. All right, so this is when we have a decimal and we're trying to get it into a percent. This is also one of the easier ones because to convert a decimal to a percent, all you have to do is multiply by 100. And when you multiply decimals by 100, we're just going to move the decimal place twice to the right. So it's 65%. Next, this says convert a fraction. So we're going to do what we learned before. This is when decimal to a fraction. We just did one like this. Remember, we're going to read what place it's in. So this is 4, and it's in the hundredths place. So that would be 4 hundredths. And let's just reduce it. I could divide by 2 and get 2/50, and then divide by 2 again, because 2 times 25 gets me 50. So I end up with 1 over 25, and there's your answer. Next one, convert to a percentage. So when I got to go a fraction to a percentage, we're just going to change it to a decimal first and then change it to a percentage. So we know how to change this to a decimal by doing 1 divided by 4.0, and you end up with 4 goes into 25 times 0.25. Once you get it into a decimal, remember what we said? How do you get it to be a percent? Well, we're just going to move the decimal place twice to the right and get 25%. So remember, guys, when you have 0.40, that's 40%. Because when you have 0.67, that's 67%. And 0.05 would be 5%, because we're just moving the decimal twice to the right. Next one, convert to a fraction. So right now we have a decimal. We want to go to a fraction. So remember, we're just going to read what place it's in. That's in the tenths place. So 6 tenths, and then we're just going to reduce it. You could divide by 2 because they have common factor, and you get 3/5. Last ones. All right. Convert to a decimal. So now we have it as a percent. Remember, we said percent is the same thing as a number over 100. And now I can easily turn it into a decimal because the denominator is 100. It's 50 hundredths, 0.50, a 50 that ends in the hundredths column. Now, 50, remember, is the same as 0.5 because you could just, anything to the right of the number, you could just cancel out. Now, next one, convert to a mixed number, 3.25. Now, you're just going to read this separately. When you have a mixed number, the whole number doesn't change. So the whole number was a 3, it still is a 3. Now, we just have to turn 0.25 into a fraction. Remember, what place does it end in? 25 hundredths. Let's reduce it by, it has a common factor of 5. So if I divide by 5, I get 5 over 20. They still have a common factor. 5 over 20, you could divide by 5. Because 5 goes into both of them, and you're left with 1/4. So it's 3 1/4.